Systems are so important because it's really easy to wake up and do everything you're supposed to do when you're feeling really motivated, but you need those systems in place when you're not motivated. I think it's really important to have a operating cadence with how you're running your business. So we talk a lot about the operating rhythm or the rhythm of the business for the go-to-market. You're creating kind of structure and rigor for how they're operating as well.
Every breakout company has a system behind it. Not just a product, not just a team. A system that connects everything, data, process, execution. That is where RevOps comes in.
We talk to hundreds of operators through portfolio companies, through our LPs, through our media brand, and the number one consistent thing that they all say is their biggest regret is not investing in RevOps earlier. And on the flip side, it's also the thing that they credit their growth to when it goes well.
In this episode, I sit down with Tessa Whittaker, who leads revenue operations at ZoomInfo, the over $1 billion global revenue engine. RevOps has become the connective tissue of SaaS, where data meets execution and AI is redefining how teams operate. And as Tessa puts it,
AI has been a great equalizer. It allows you, even if you aren't the most technical operator, to execute and create faster than ever before.
This conversation is a masterclass in systems thinking. All right, let's get into it.
Tessa, welcome to the podcast. It's such a fun privilege to be able to pick your brain, specifically for many reasons. But one is that, we talk to hundreds of operators through portfolio companies, through our LPs, through our media brand, and the number one consistent thing that they all say is their biggest regret is not investing in RevOps earlier.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, it's also the thing that they credit their growth to when it goes well. You have gone and essentially scaled your career now to run RevOps at one of the most iconic companies, ZoomInfo. But it's super fun to be sitting down together and pick your brain on this. Like, how did you go, first and foremost, from a career standpoint to running RevOps at ZoomInfo? It's funny because even now, now that I'm sitting in this RevOps role, it's funny to be like, wow, I'm like in the hottest job in tech right now. But I really believe that. Like, I think it's so cool to see RevOps front and center, and especially in the age of AI right now, where RevOps is really re-architecting how we think about the go-to-market through this AI first lens. And so it's just a really exciting time to be in that role. But interesting enough, I started my career in tech as an executive assistant. We've talked about this before. So I was right out of college, moving into San Francisco. I thought I was going to be a lawyer, thought I was going to go to law school. And I got a job right away as an assistant at this law firm. And they, paid me no money. I think there were times where I was like pulling together quarters to figure out how to like take the bus to get down to the law firm.
Yeah.
And I had a recruiter reach out first to go to another recruiting firm to be an EA. And then within 3 months, I got invited to essentially apply for this executive assistant role at Salesforce. And so I started at Salesforce in 2014 as an executive assistant. I supported 3 sales leaders. And then over the period of, it's just under a decade, I went from executive assistant to senior director running strategy and operations for the global enterprise at Tableau. So I had gone over as part of the acquisition, and it was really the most incredible journey. I've actually never talked about this before, but I think it was about 2 years before I left Salesforce, they had us do these IDPs, individual development plans, and you would talk about your strengths and what you were working on. And you would say, here is my vision of what I want to do in 3 to 5 years. And I actually put, I will leave Salesforce when I get a VP of RevOps job at a company under 5,000 people. I didn't even know what RevOps was. This role is specific. It was so specific. And I laugh about that because one of my mentors, she's head of operations at ClickHouse, and I were talking about this recently. And I had that conversation with her, and I remember her and I talking about it, and I had no idea what RevOps really was, or I think what I thought it was is definitely not what it is. So the power of, I guess, manifestation. But yeah, I during Dreamforce one year, I met the COO of ZoomInfo at the time, and they invited me to apply, and I came over, and I had always been more on the sales operations or pipeline operations side, and this was the first time that I had really gotten technical.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, I was VP RevOps at ZoomInfo. I think my org was around 70 at that time. Half of it were these go-to-market engineers, and I had never led engineering before.
That's a huge jump.
Yeah, it was.
But what a wild thing that you wrote down that specifically you would leave when you became a VP of RevOps, even at a certain headcount of company.
Yeah, and it's
Where is that so
oddly specific. I think I thought RevOps meant sales. I don't know. I think at that time, no one really knew what RevOps was. Like now, when I say RevOps, people know what RevOps is. It is this umbrella that encompasses all different types of operational teams. So you have your traditional sales ops, partner ops, operational teams that are doing the territory planning or the quota setting or the pipeline management or the forecast. And then you have the teams that are maybe more product management or process and systems. So taking all the processes across the business and automating it into the systems, managing the revenue tech stack, all the integrations. Like when you talk about RevOps now, people know what it is. 3 years ago, no one really knew what RevOps was, and everyone had a different title. It really has been this title now that people are rebranding under.
Mm-hmm. So why did you pick RevOps of all things? And what attracted you to manifest or hope or guess that would be the path for you?
Yeah, I think it goes back to even when I was in EA. I think about really good operators like to solve really complex problems, and they like to take things that are maybe really complicated and simplify them to operate as efficiently as possible. And I think back to like even being in EA, and it was like you had no choice but to just get shit done.
Yeah.
Like there was no, challenge or problem that came up that you had the ability not to solve. Like your job was just to figure it out.
Right.
And I think with operators, you know that no matter what, you have to execute. And so I think it was just this natural progression for me that taking the core skills that I had from an EA and then naturally kind of something I was just naturally good at.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It almost goes to the power of, manifestation, but also setting a goal and hitting that goal. And in order to do so, you usually have to actually run and develop systems to hit those goals. So systems. A lot. Yeah, exactly. Like, what are your personal systems before we even get into RevOps? But to go from your EA position to running RevOps at just an incredible company, what did you actually do to get there? How do you focus on your internal systems? I know that's a very loaded question, but how do you think about that world of Tessa's operating system?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that it's a muscle that I've developed over time. That is deeply, I'd say, rooted in discipline.
Yeah.
But I think that, systems are so important because it's really easy to wake up and do everything you're supposed to do when you're feeling really motivated. But you need those systems in place when you're not motivated. So I've always been really goal-oriented, like even, like I said, going through that individual development plan saying like, I want to be this. But I've always thought, what are the things that I want to accomplish long-term, and then been really good at, taking the long-term goals or that long-term vision, or where do I see myself in 3 to 5 years, and then being able to translate that vision back to the tactical, which is funny because that's what I do at work as well. I'd say that's one of my superpowers is how do you take where you want to go in that big vision and be really excited about it, but then break that down in a really simplified way in tactical execution steps. Mm-hmm. And so I do that with my personal life. Actually, this year was the first year it got a lot easier because I used GPT to basically do it, which was, what are the, across the 5 different areas of my life, what are the goals that I want to set this year, and then breaking those out by quarter, and then building them into a Notion system where I then am tracking myself against those goals, and then having check-ins with myself weekly or biweekly on how I'm tracking against all of those things to hold myself accountable. And, we were talking a little bit, we're both training for marathon.
Yeah.
And that's also been, I think it's actually helped me from like my system thinking even further, because it's so rooted in discipline and routine that it's waking up, and even when you don't want to do something, you're holding yourself accountable to doing something. But I think, again, just having that big vision, breaking down the tactical, building it into a system, like I said, Notion, and then having that operating cadence, that rhythm of my own personal business where I'm reflecting to see if I'm actually on track, has been really helpful to hold myself accountable.
Yeah. Super systemized.
Before we dive in, a quick word on hiring. It's a weird market out there right now, but finding top go-to-market talent is still one of the biggest levers for growth. At GTM Fund, we've made over 2,000 candidate intros and placed hundreds of 8 players. One of our go-to recruiting partners is Pursuit. They specialize in sales and marketing talent, and they do it without a retainer. We work with them closely across many roles. If you're hiring, go to pursuitsalessolutions.com/GTM. That'll be in the show notes. Or ping someone from the GTM Fund team. We'll get you connected.
And you said there were 5 things that you track. What are those 5 things?
So I would say there's like health, like physical, mental health.
Yeah.
Which is really important. There's finances. So like, how am I doing financially against my goals or spending or what I want to be saving? There's relationships, both friends and family, how I'm spending my time there. There is, now I'm going to lose track of my professionally. So what am I doing from a professional standpoint, both in my job and creatively? And then it would be just like growth. So what am I doing from a personal development or professional development to make sure that I'm continuing to drive myself forward?
Very cool. And how often do you review those?
Probably, I would say like I try to do it weekly, but it's mostly please put 30 minutes on your calendar to see how you're tracking. And, I think you think about all the different ways you want to spend your time and all the different things you want to accomplish. Like you don't have a just endless amount of time. And so if you think of it like, like a pizza or a pie chart, and if you're spending, this much more time maybe on your relationships, or you're spending this much more time on fitness, like there's other parts of your life where that pie or that triangle is going to get a lot smaller. So even reflecting on, okay, this is how I'm tracking against my goals. Well, how did I spend my time? Does my time actually match my goals?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I actually started doing at work, is color coding my calendar against my different goals that I have professionally. So you have, I don't know, for me, I'm in way too many meetings. I probably sit in 10, 11 hours of meetings a day.
Wow.
And I have 4 to 5 core goals per quarter with KPIs that I'm trying to hit. And then color coding all of those meetings against those goals and saying, okay, well, am I spending 80% of my time against one of those goals, and my other 4 goals, I'm only spending 20% of my time? How do I either delegate or cancel meetings or consolidate to ensure that I'm equally spending my time against the most important things to hit my goals, which are ultimately a reflection of what I need to do to move the business forward?
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you're almost doing a time tracking exercise to make sure that you're allocating your most precious finite resource, time, towards those 5.
Yeah. Super systematized about how I spend my time, because I think, it's so easy for us to get really locked in or focused on one thing, which isn't necessarily a bad thing sometimes. Like, right, you have to be obsessed to hit big goals. If anyone has talked to me in the last month, the only thing I talk about is running.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to check ourselves and saying, are we spending our time in the right places to ultimately hit our personal and professional strategic goals that we're setting out to do?
Now, are you structuring it similar to an annual planning exercise where you've got your 5 things in your Notion board and now we're reviewing them weekly? Do you have like quarterly KPIs too? Like, what is the, weekly cadence? What's the next level of cadence when you're actually kind of restructuring it.
Yeah. Anyone listening to
Monthly and quarterly,
an absolute psycho.
they're going to be taking notes. I'm like already taking notes and mentally visualizing doing this.
It's funny. I always go back to this, and it's cheesy, but like I love the Salesforce B2 mom.
Okay.
Yeah. So this, I probably because that was the first exposure I ever had to goal setting, and I was 23 years old.
Yeah.
When I started working there, and it's this idea that you have this like high level vision statement, and then underneath it you have like what are your like 5 core values, and then underneath that what are your methods and measures of which you're going to basically achieve that vision. And so like you have your vision statement, here are the values that I'm going to follow. And then you have, here's my method. So I'm going to do this. And then your measures underneath it are going to be the specific actions you take that are like, that you can measure over, days, weeks, months, quarters of time. And so you might say, okay, to accomplish this vision, I need to do this thing this year. Here's what I'm going to do in Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4 to accomplish that.
And you do a work back. Okay, Lori, love that. I love a work plan. We love a work back plan.
Yeah.
The way, and I've kind of structured my planning to date a little bit differently. I think I'm going to try and adopt your model because I actually love the systematized framing a lot more. Mine is similar to a bit of a burner analogy on a stovetop. So everyone's kind of, turning different elements on. You can turn them up, you can turn them down. So it's a similar kind of time allocation. But then similarly, it will be around, friends and family, relationships, connection, professional, adventure and growth, financial, and so forth. And so you're constantly optimizing and adjusting your burners every single quarter. But when you commit to something on a quarterly basis, you know exactly how much temperature gauge you're going to turn it up and what that means for your KPIs and kind of actions under it. But I wouldn't say I'm reviewing them weekly. So I think I need to be a little bit more diligent about that because that truly is how you make progress. If you don't track it, you can't make progress.
I think so. And I mean, there's certainly, we also have talked about this before, times where I have so much on my plate that maybe all right, we're going to take a pause from that for a couple of weeks, and you're just literally focused on going from the next thing to the next thing because that's all that you have capacity for. And of course, there's times like that, but being able to kind of fall back on those systems when you are feeling burnt out or you have so much going on, it can be incredibly helpful to get back on track.
Absolutely. And you do have a ton going on right now, especially at this particular moment because you're running a marathon in a mere few weeks. Yeah. So you've got your systems for your goal planning. You're successfully hitting your goals based on that system. But what are you doing even right now when things get crazy busy in your life? How are you actually falling back on those systems and maintaining your health side? What's the health operating system?
Yeah, interesting. So I think I take a much simpler approach when it comes to health.
Yeah.
Which is, it's, when you're overwhelmed or there's a lot going on, the 2 things I fall back on are cut alcohol and sleep.
Yeah.
Because, you can be on the circuit and you're going to a lot of conferences or you're throwing a lot of events, and that all is really incredibly exhausting. And even if you have 1 or 2 drinks while you're on the road or doing those things, it can make it so much more exhausting.
Yeah.
And so when I know that I'm going through a really, when I'm going through a certain sprint of work or, training or anything personally or professionally, the first thing I'll cut is, okay, I'm not even going to have 1 or 2 drinks socially. Cut that out and then make sure that I'm getting at least 7 hours of sleep.
Brilliant.
Okay, great. Let's simplify it.
Yeah, simplify it. Okay, brilliant. So we've got the Tessa operating system around the goal planning, the health side. Are there other aspects under the operating system that we haven't touched on?
I mean, I think it's really important that you have obviously your own operating system, but then also facilitating and helping the people on your teams or the leaders that you're working with to also have systems that they can fall back on. I think it's really important to have a operating cadence with how you're running your business. So we talk a lot about the operating rhythm or the rhythm of the business for the go-to-market. Yeah. So what are the things that we're doing daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly? What are the different meetings that have to happen? What are the data reviews that have to happen? What are the different, enablements or trainings that have to happen? But I also think it's really important to have that for your internal org to make sure that they have routine and predictable meetings and checkpoints. So you're creating kind of structure and rigor for how they're operating as well.
Yeah.
And so for RevOps, at ZoomInfo, we have our RevOps operating rhythm that we fall back on. And then we have, of course, systems that support that as well, which help us operate as efficiently and productively as possible. And now with AI, we've been able to take a lot of all the manual tasks that RevOps did before and automate and or leverage AI to give us a lot of time back, which has been possible because we were so structured and already operating with the rigor, prior to that.
Yeah, you almost had the system in place for AI to come in and actually scale, but you had to implement that system first, which takes a lot of discipline and rigor.
Yeah.
And if we think about RevOps overall, it is the system that underlies growth, especially for venture scale companies.
Yeah.
Like you can't skip that step.
Right.
And so if you were, let's say, given, hypothetically, a challenge or a request from the team, and the objective is to go upmarket, how do you think about that from a systems RevOps approach? How do you break down any kind of growth goal to that foundation?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when people talk about going up market, one of the first conversations that will happen is how are we going to reallocate resources to go up market? So what does that mean? What does that mean from a seller perspective? What does that mean from a sales development perspective? What does that mean from a support perspective? And I remember having this conversation with my leader, and ZoomInfo has been very focused on going up market in the enterprise the last couple of years. And I think the question that he asked me exactly was, how are you going to think about the reallocation of your resources to support this upmarket growth?
Yeah.
And it was funny because I said, well, I'm in RevOps. I'm not going to reallocate my resources upmarket. I need to focus more down market. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, if you're going up market with your resources predominantly, you need to automate as much down market as you can because you're pulling resources off of it. So what were the things that you had people focused on before? What were the things that were maybe manual before? What are the things that you had more people focused on before? And then how do you build out new processes, new systems, now, AI workflows to support that down market so that you can pull people off of it because it's going to run itself.
Fascinating. Okay. So it's almost a little counterintuitive, I think, than most people realize.
Right. Yeah. So you need to be thinking more systematically of how you do more with less down market, which is going to take more focus from RevOps, I think, initially.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned AI as part of that, and a huge, huge necessity for an AI strategy, and where we see a lot of companies trying to jump through is to actually have a data strategy and data foundation in place. How are you building your AI strategy at ZoomInfo?
Yeah. Well, I can speak at least to how we're thinking about it from a RevOps perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I think, incredibly lucky to be at ZoomInfo because we have the data, and like you said, like you need to have a data strategy in order to have an AI strategy. And you can't just build AI agents on top of your CRM. So your CRM data is likely very dirty. It doesn't have your total addressable market in it. And so to think, okay, I'm just going to go out and get an AI SDR and stick it on top of my CRM data, like that's never going to work, and it's not ever going to scale. And so, being incredibly fortunate to be in this position where we have this virtual data layer, we have that first party, third party data, is that from a RevOps perspective, not only am I thinking about how my team is operating, but when I think about innovating in the go-to-market, there's so much that we can do that's already readily available to us to completely transform how we're executing in the go-to-market by thinking through where are there manual steps or places that we're asking sellers or sales development to do things that we can actually automate and then, pull in our data and surface to them at the right time in order for them to execute and operate and do their jobs as efficiently as possible.
Mm-hmm. So what are the most critical parts? Having built out a scaled system, usually you run into a lot of hiccups along the way. And so everybody tries to learn from somebody 10 steps ahead, and you are 10 steps ahead. So what are the learnings from scaling a revenue organization that you've had? That's like one area.
Yeah.
I think if we don't have to do it, it's just there. It's just like, it's funny because like I haven't this is the gap. Like I haven't scaled RevOps.
Mm-hmm.
When I came into ZoomInfo, there was a lot that we had to re-architect to scale.
Yeah.
I think, you think a lot about how do you build things to scale from the start.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you're in a hyper-growth startup, you're just building as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Thinking about, are there ways that I'm going to build this thing that's not going to just support 5 sellers, it's going to support 200 sellers? Like, I don't know if you're thinking about that at that stage.
No, I think you're in survival mode. And it's interesting when we think about what do RevOps teams look like at a startup versus what do they look like at a company like ZoomInfo. Yeah.
Is that at a startup, your RevOps team is wearing 20 different hats. So who's taking the requirements or talking to the business or making strategic decisions might be the same person who's your Salesforce admin. And so, yes, it's incredibly important to invest in RevOps early on, but the people that you're investing in are wearing 15 different hats.
Yeah.
And so when I think about being at a company that is, upmarket, we're selling into the enterprise, we're currently re-architecting our revenue operations, our processes, and our systems and our workflows to support a larger organization that is going to be built to scale.
Yeah.
There's a lot that I'm redoing that I sit there and I go, well, why did we do it that way in the first place? But who am I to judge when you're growing like a rocket ship, which ZoomInfo did? They were building as fast as they can. And so I think it is your job when you come into a revenue operations job at a company that is the size of ZoomInfo to say, okay, here is what our tech stack looks like. Here are all of our processes and our systems, and kind of doing a complete audit of that and saying, okay, yes, from our tech stack, where is there duplication? Where is there consolidation opportunities? Where are there systems that we have, maybe they're not best in class anymore, and we need to look at that renewal and bring in someone new and, rip that out and replace. Like you go through all of those motions. But, giving advice to someone who's in that hyper growth early stage of what should you be thinking about now that you would want to think about when you're where I am, like, I actually think that, it's a completely different mindset of what you're building. But it's been really fun. I mean, we're going to be, at the end of this year, we'll have re-architected almost all of our revenue tech stack, which has been really exciting. We've done some really incredible rip and replace of some systems. And we're now looking across every single process that supports the go-to-market. And we've audited that. And we said, okay, where is manual processes? Where are there automated processes? Where do we need to take manual processes and make them automated? And then where can we actually build in these AI workflows? And so that is something that I think every RevOps person is going through right now at a larger company, is basically this audit and then mapping of where can we actually start with AI and what will be the most impactful of use cases.
One quick thing. If you like what you're hearing here, you should check out the Product Market Fit Show hosted by Pablo Srugro of Mistral VC, where top founders share exactly how they found product market fit. It's one of the best podcasts for early stage founders going from 0 to 1. Just search the Product Market Fit Show or check the show notes.
And where are you thinking about it in RevOps? Where has been the most impactful place to start?
Yeah, well, so what's interesting, and I talk about this actually in my talk at the Pavilion conference. Can't wait. But I talk about how I get questions all the time from different operators about like, what were your top 10 use cases, et cetera, or where should I start? My ELT is asking me.
Yeah.
And the very first thing that I did was I turned it around to my own team. And I said, obviously we're fielding inbound requests from our leaders right now on different AI workflows, and we are supporting all of those things. But I knew that the evolution of the speed of which we were going to be expected to work was only going to continue to increase. And so it was going to be really critical that we were able to work as quickly as possible. So how do I take a team that supports the go-to-market and make them completely AI first?
Right.
And so, how a typical RevOps team might work is they get a Slack or a call or a text message or 30 of those things all at the same time from the business asking for something to make a change or to support this thing or pull this report or change this workflow or whatever it is. And before it was just all very manual. So you might get on a call with the business and then you ask them a bunch of questions and they might not know those questions. And then you have 3 or 4 more calls and all of a sudden you're pulling people from the business and then you're building out requirements and then you're meeting, and grooming those requirements with the technical resources. And then you might go back to the business with questions and it's like this very manual thing that all of a sudden one request from the business might be 10 or 15 hours of work. And so we actually built out an agent that intakes now all the requests from the business. And so when someone comes to us and they need something from anywhere in the business, the agent starts asking them a series of questions. And in a single interaction, we get the requirements, we understand what they're trying to achieve. We actually ask them questions that then allow us to, or that agent to assess where does it fall on a priority standpoint, like how would we even prioritize this? And at the end of it, you have full requirements. They're groomed for the technical team, ready to go and sprint with a prioritization score where it should actually fall.
Wow.
So that, sounds so simple. But if you have 30 RevOps people and they're all spending, 5 or 10 hours on sometimes one single intake, talking about, hundreds or thousands of hours of work.
That's not simple at all. That's a ton of work. And you're also consolidating all the requests that you get into now one system.
Right.
And so everybody's going directly to the agent now?
Yeah. So we're sending them directly to the agent. And then I think prioritization, it sounds so simple, like prioritization. Why is that something that, RevOps people are constantly asking about? But like when I go out and talk to RevOps folks, besides AI, the number one question I get is, how do you guys prioritize your work? Because it's such a problem, because I think historically you work on the things that the people in the business are the loudest about, or whoever is shouting the loudest gets their work done first, which isn't necessarily the things that are most important to move the business forward. And so that's really helped us support that. And then in terms of where we're starting with the business, it's where are those really manual tasks that we know that sales or sales development we're doing, and how do we make it really simple for them to execute and do their jobs and spend as much time as possible with customers, which we know is so important when you're going up market and in the enterprise relationships are everything. What are the most manual things or the most time consuming things that your sellers are doing, and starting there and making it easy for them to operate is, I think, how we've started to prioritize where we're leveraging AI.
Very cool. I mean, that's incredible. You guys have done a phenomenal job of not only shifting the impact that you have on other organizations AI forward. I didn't even realize the extent to which you'd optimize internally. And with your outward strategy, one would assume that you are doing it internally, but it's so interesting to hear the details that you're actually building out internally.
It's interesting. I think I made a lot of mistakes when I was trying to figure out how to make my organization AI first. I think 6 months ago, it was like, guys, if you don't start thinking AI first, like, don't have jobs in a year, which like the fear and
lead with the threat.
And that certainly wasn't working. And then I did things around like, all right, we're going to have contests where like you take courses or you do this thing and you can like win prizes. And that was like kind of cheesy and didn't really work either. But I was sitting, in the situation where I just wasn't seeing everyone across the RevOps organization adopt AI fast enough, or some people were really scared about it or didn't really know where to start. And so it was really fortunate. So ZI actually built an internal chat where at first, like similar, you would go to GBT, you go in and you can ask it questions. But this was really great because it was secure and integrated with different systems internally and our data, et cetera. And then we got the ability to build out our own agents. And so now anyone at ZoomInfo can build their own agent to solve real go-to-market challenges. And so we have like hundreds and hundreds of agents that anyone from a sales development representative and SDR can build to people on my team. And so that was really great because we just made it really effortless to start getting hands-on with AI. And then 2 weeks ago, I actually had an agent hackathon with my team where every single person had to go through this presentation where they built out an agent to support a real go-to-market challenge and then presented it. And that was really the turning point where people saw how they could really get creative with AI.
Yeah.
And I think the barrier to entry before was, how do I even begin to build with AI? How do I even build an agent? They couldn't start to get creative. And so one of the things that ZoomInfo has done such a good job of is how do we allow operators to get creative again by taking away that barrier to entry of the more technical elements or challenges that maybe they had before and allowing them to just really be strategic and create for the first time. And not only have we done that, obviously, internally, like I'm talking about with ZI Chat, but we're doing that again with our product. And Go-to-Market Studio is an example of that, being able to actually just be creative and create and execute for the first time without begging for a technical resource to support.
Yeah, that is incredible. And now you've got reps and individuals creating their own agents within your ecosystem.
Well, not all are created equal, but they're getting hands-on. But you could see the most used agents, and it is really helping people.
There's the accountability in terms of the guilt. If they see everybody else on the leaderboard.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you avoid technical debt around agents? So let's say you've got an entire organization that can create their own agents. How do you not end up with thousands of agents and then only a handful are getting used?
That's a really great question that I don't have the answer to.
We might be too early.
No, I think right now, it's, how do we get people hands-on? How do we get them creating?
Yeah.
Let's see what's working, what's not working. I think naturally you see by the adoption the ones that are better built. And I think, driving people to, it's not driving people to, but it's actually instead it's looking at the ones that they're actually making the most impact and then taking those and either building them out further or continuing to iterate on those or actually building them into the standard sales process is probably what we'll see happen first. And so if there's 3 or 4 or 5 or 15 that are being used all the time, how do we actually make that a part of the standard way that we're operating? And so I think first is let's get everyone hands-on, let's see what people create, and then let's see what's working, and then let's pull that into the standardized playbook and make sure everyone is leveraging that. But right now, I think we're just in that really cool ideate, move fast, execute, see what's making an impact, and then from there, we can build that into the sales playbook.
Mm-hmm. And you really systemized it around that. It's cool. It almost feels like a democratization of creation of the system, where we used to have managers that created the systems and passed it along to teams. And now it's almost made that so horizontal where anyone can create an experimental agent, gauge performance, and then bake it into the process now. So they're not mere suggestions. Like you skipped the suggestion step and just jumped right to execution.
Right.
And enabled everyone to execute with your model.
Right. Which is really exciting. Yeah, it's really exciting. I think that one of the things that I love about AI is I do believe that it is, and I like that word, like democratization. Like it's allowing anyone who is an operator, regardless of how technical they are, to be able to execute. Whereas I think before, you were more reliant on different technical teams or technical resources or in a queue, maybe with engineering to get something done. And now it allows you, even if you aren't the most technical operator, to execute and create faster than ever before. And I think what's interesting, I grew up at Salesforce. Yeah, which is a very big company. I started with 10,000 people. And by the time I left, it was 70,000 people. And when I stepped into ZoomInfo and I was running a team that was very technical, and I did spend a lot of time, really focusing on how do I up-level myself and become more technical and making sure that I am very hands-on. I think the best operators are both hands-on and really good leaders. I never wanted to just be a leader's leader. And so always really pushed myself and continue to push myself every day to be really hands-on. But there were certainly things that I wasn't hands-on before or different technical background I did not have that maybe other RevOps folks did or have that I didn't. And so I think that for me, AI has been a great equalizer because I leaned into that and I said, I can know AI or execute with AI or think AI first, faster or before anyone else. And so that has become, my technical background. And even though I didn't come up as a Salesforce admin or, some sort of engineer, I feel like it's been an equalizer for me to be truly technical and a RevOps leader, innovating in my role.
It's really level set the playing field.
Yeah,
for everybody.
I think so. And I think we're thinking about RevOps now and with this like concept of like the rise of the go-to-market architect. And we're moving from this like really reactive role that we had before to being really proactive and more strategic. And I think AI has given us time back in the sense that we're not doing the manual things that we were doing before, but it has allowed us to look holistically at the go-to-market and say, okay, what are the things that we want to innovate on or change or move on faster than before? And AI has allowed us to do that.
Definitely. Yeah. Entirely changed everything. Changed everything. Truly. I love it. And how are you learning? We talked about your operating system that you have in part because it sounds like that has been a huge part of just the way you've built overall, but now out of necessity when you're super busy.
Yeah.
How do you have time to learn about AI and just overall keep up to date with all the changes?
Yeah. I think the two things, maybe the three things that help the most, I think one is just community, which seems pretty simple, but I surround myself with a ton of RevOps people. Yeah, I probably have 3 or 4 WhatsApps or text iMessage groups with my peers, and we're talking all the time. So what are you doing internally from an innovation standpoint? What demos have you taken lately? Is there anything that you're adding to your tech stack? Is there anything you're replacing in your tech stack? Just really understanding what are the things day to day that they're doing or thinking about or working on. I think that's really important. If you're a RevOps person and you're not talking to other operators, I would say it's a big miss because I think I'm ahead or I think I'm doing really well. And then I talk to one of my peers and I'll go, oh my gosh, you're doing that. Like, that's such a great idea. That's awesome. Like, I'm going to steal that. I'm going to do that too. But it's always like pushing me to continue to innovate or look ahead. And I think your peers are a good benchmark for that. I think the second is just I take like demos and actually seeing what people are building. And I think I'm so inspired when I'm seeing the different things that are coming up or AI solutions. And I think as a RevOps leader, you spend a lot of time thinking about, is this something I'm going to buy versus build? And you're not going to know what you're building unless you're at least looking or exploring what you could buy. And so making sure that you're spending time really understanding what's being built. And then I think the third is probably just talking to your customers. When you understand what challenges they have and you understand what they're trying to solve for, it allows you to think, okay, is that something that I can solve or is that something that I can build? And I think that helps you also creatively as well. Maybe there's 4. And then I think just getting hands-on, like you have to, like me building my own agents. Yeah. And, getting into different systems and tinkering as well. I think you have to be hands-on. And if you're not, then you're just going to fall behind.
Yeah. Simply put, I think go-to-market, tech modes have declined, right? Go-to-market really is your differentiator. And a huge part of that is not only your strategy, but your execution. And I think AI is such a cool moment because it shines the light on execution.
Right.
And it forces everyone to just continuously up-level it and do that.
Yeah.
I love it. And what about more on the book side? So less AI, but are there any favorite kind of books you've had that have been really impactful over your career?
Oh, gosh. So 6 months ago, Ross Rich, his CEO of Accord, sent me a book. 6 months ago, it might have been for Christmas. I don't know. It's always lovely to get because they're at a holiday. Maybe it was around the holidays, but he sent me The Alchemist, which I'd never read before.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's been a single book in my life that has been more impactful. I think about it every single day.
Wow.
Every single day.
Yeah.
This idea that you're going on this journey through your life, you have this like life mission or you're going on this adventure.
Yeah.
And how, as you move forward or as you progress or as you go along this journey, there's times where you get really incredibly comfortable. And you're comfortable because where you are in your life is better than you ever imagined it could be or it's ever been before. And so you don't think about maybe moving forward or making more progress. And I've always said, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And so in this book, he has these moments where he thinks like, I have more than I could have ever wanted. Like, why would I keep going? Like, why don't I stay here?
Right.
But it's like, you can always go back. Yeah, you can always go back. And so I just love that book so much because it's about always making progress and being okay with taking risks and being okay with maybe leaving what you thought was really great behind, because you can always go back, but you still have to go on this adventure, this journey.
Yeah.
And I probably talk about that book, I don't know, several times a week with folks if you haven't.
I have not read it, so I'm going to, and we'll drop it in the show notes forever. And
Yeah, I read it on the plane, on a plane. I think I cried through half of it, and then I gave it to
blame it on the altitude.
Yeah, they put altitude, and then I gifted it to the guy sitting next to me, and I said,
That's amazing.
This book.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Sorry for giving it away, Ross.
Yeah. There we go. We won't tell him, but no, that's very cool. I think it's too often we think about an end state, and often it is not an end state. It's actually about the evolution, the continuous growth, as opposed to reaching that end state. And it's the interesting realization that a lot of people have in tech too, once they've usually built and sold a company successfully, is to reflect back and realize, there's no actual mountaintop. It's all just entire growth and progression, or as some people like to reference from the book, and there's 2 mountains and 2 peaks and so forth, and the other one's always in the distance. So I love that.
Yeah, I think it's good. I really try to reframe when I start to feel comfortable or anxious, or that feeling that you get when you're about to do something that you've never done before. Like, this is good. Like, it's good that you're feeling this way because it means that you're growing. And so I really anchored in that.
And so growth is one of your 5 in your Notion board, or however people want to position it, if you want to replicate
and growth you could kind of do across all of them. But I think, growth I kind of almost put in a category all on its own.
Yeah. And is that mostly qualitative in nature then, around you self-reflecting and mapping growth progress? Or how do you actually quantify your goals around growth based on your learnings from the Alchemist now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think growth to me is just progress. I think growth isn't just, like you said, climbing a mountain. Growth comes from really deep valleys or making mistakes or things you try where you fail, or maybe you try and you're successful. So I think growth to me, when I think about setting goals about growth, it's doing things that make me uncomfortable, or maybe that I've never done before, or the things that, I don't necessarily want to do, but I know are important to push me forward and give me experiences that I've never had before. Interesting, I would say that the number one thing that's shifted recently for me and in my life that I never felt before, but it's been incredibly liberating, is I don't think I'm afraid to fail anymore. Like, I think, I think I spent so much of my life trying to prove something to somebody, and now all I want to do is prove things to myself, and I'm not competitive with anyone but myself. And I think that's been really motivating for me. But then now just saying, like, I'm never going to be afraid if something doesn't work out. I'm never going to be afraid of failing. What I'm most afraid about is never trying.
Yes.
And I think when you finally get there, it's like the most liberating thing in the world.
That is amazing and beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think those are words that surround the systems. We've talked a lot about systems now, but it's like the bigger why of why do you build the system? And those are the moments around it. I think Payal Kadakia, I don't know if she was necessarily the first one, but she definitely spoke a lot to it around fear and kind of failure. It's just a data point. And so it's simply a data point. If you're not hitting that point, then you're not trying hard enough. And I spent a lot of time in conversion optimization, which was one of the most valuable lessons around failure, because truly failure is good. Like, you want to fail and you want to learn from it, but it is a failure if you are hitting experiments and you're optimizing, you're trying to improve your revenue and your funnel, but you're not learning from it. So you're either documenting a learning or you are failing. And that's the real failure.
Yeah.
It's not. So your system to actually document it is really valuable and interesting for people. Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you. This has been incredibly, incredibly valuable, Tessa. You got the marathon coming up. That's the first for you, talking about growth. Yes. And you're running a marathon as well. So I am. However, I would say my systems aren't as diligent as yours. I'm running a couple times a week, a little bit less than yourself. So I follow around harder. So I will make sure to send you notes. There you go. Send me bumps. Not fast enough or anything. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm excited for you. I'm excited to track your whole journey throughout it. So, well, thank you so much for having me. Absolutely. Thank you.